Jon Wilner spent his day where nobody wants to spend their day. Wilner, where were you today?
Well, it was not all day, fortunately, although I thought it might be. I was at the DMV getting my driver's license renewed, doing the real ID thing finally.
Yeah. Oh, you finally got legal. TSA
finally
legal.
got legal. I've been flying. I've been using my passport to fly for a while now. I thought I would be okay going to the DMV at like 8:30 on a Monday morning on June 8th. I'm thinking, you know what? What could be happening in college sports, and then get home from that. Got to take the dog to the vet for an unexpected injury. And then, it's like 1 o'clock and it's like, I had been monitoring social media, but then you dig into it finally. And like, well, I missed a lot today. I missed everything. I missed DEFCON 0.
You missed quite a bit. Nothing, normally people go, nothing happened. But you missed quite a bit. We're going to get into all of it today. Appreciate everybody who makes this show part of their day. Make sure you like and subscribe, share it with your friends and family. Comment, tell us what you think. Love the comments. You can read me at johncanzano.com. You read him at wilnerhotline.com. But by the way, how did the DMV go? How long were you there? Did you get out of there pretty cleanly? Were you able to make an appointment, or do you walk in and take a number? How does it work at your DMV?
That was key. I had an appointment.
Okay.
So it actually, and I didn't go to the DMV in San Jose. I went to the one in Santa Clara, which actually I will not fault them. It was pretty smooth, about 2 hours.
Ooh.
So it could have been way worse. I was expecting way worse. I'm
2
expecting
hours.
The worst. So, no complaints, to be honest.
Okay.
Except that the timing turned out to be bad. I got to tell you, I can't remember the last time we had a show as news-packed as what we are about to get into here. I mean, it's every week. It is May, June. Every week there's stuff going on, and it's important stuff. And I can't think of one that really exceeded what we got to get to here.
Well, let's start with the news of the day. Texas Tech quarterback Brendan Sorsby. They found a judge that gave him an injunction, says he would suffer permanent and irreparable damage if he were not allowed to play college football this season. Texas Tech has a QB. Where are we in your mind on the Sorsby situation?
Yes, they found a judge in Lubbock, but it wasn't a Lubbock judge. They brought him in from Tarrant County, Texas, and he still ruled in favor of Texas Tech. So he issued a temporary injunction that will allow Sorsby to play starting in Game 3. He can start playing, in theory, Game 3, which happens to be a big game against Houston. So this is gigantic. I mean, you could argue because at the heart of what we do with college football in any sport is we have to believe what we're seeing is credible, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's not predetermined, that it's not professional wrestling. Well, if you're allowed to gamble on your own team and then play, then that opens potentially a wormhole that I think could end up threatening the sport, seriously threatening. This is not the transfer portal. It's not NIL or revenue sharing. It's not a 24-team CFP. It's not, early signing day in early December, and it's not Lane Kiffin leaving in the middle of the playoffs. This is the most fundamental rule in sports. The kid violated it when he was in Indiana. He bet on Indiana, and he is now going to be allowed to play. Now, a couple of things real quick. One is the NCAA is going to appeal to District Court, Seventh Circuit in Texas, I believe, where my understanding is all the judges are Texas Tech graduates. Now, the ruling itself is local. It is not a federal ruling. So, if an athlete in Florida or Minnesota does the same thing, there's no guarantee that the precedent set with Sorsby will be upheld elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
The other important thing to know is that the Big 12 is going to have a meeting tomorrow. I believe it's tomorrow with the ADs and Brett Yormark, and they're going to try to figure out what to do because I think there's a lot of people within the conference that are feeling like we should not be playing Texas Tech. They should not be allowed to compete on the field because this is such an important rule that was violated. So I'll stop, you go, but those are some of the basics.
I want to, in my mind, make a differentiation between college athletics and professional athletics. And maybe it's jumped the shark, but I do still see the guys who are playing college football as college athletes. And I do tend to lean towards, hey, can we rehab this kid? Can we get him into a gambling program?
Yeah.
Is there a path back to society? Is there a path back to playing? I'm always looking for these things, particularly in college sports, high school sports, youth sports. Let's not throw the book at the athletes like they're professionals. Now, I know that with a grain of salt, like they're professionals. They would tell you they're earning money and this kid, stands to make a whole bunch of money playing football. But I want there to be a path back for him. And so I think, what the court is saying is obviously that he's not in the free and clear. He's going to have a suspension here. I almost feel like they're looking over at Texas Tech and they're looking over at the Big 12 and they're going, don't drop the turd in our lap. You guys deal with the problem that you've created by letting gambling into the house. But I also want to say this, like, he's not the only athlete that's gambling on games. He's not the only athlete that's gambling on his own games. It's going to come out that there are others. And so I do think we're on a slippery hillside here, this whole thing. And I think it's really problematic. I don't like it. I don't like that you have to deal with it. I don't like that it's in a court, but I want to look at this kid and I want to go, hey, let's not, like get him out of the country like baseball did with, Shohei Ohtani's interpreter. Let's try to rehab the kid. Let's punish him. Let's send a message. And then let's work with him on rehabbing his life and getting him back onto the field. And by the way, he shouldn't be gambling.
Yeah, clearly, he has an addiction. He has a mental illness. There's no doubt about that. And that was a big part of his attorney's case was he's got a mental illness. He has taken the steps. He's on the road to recovery. He should be allowed back. But boy, you can't walk 10 feet in an athletic department without a sign that says you can't gamble, right? And you can't gamble on your own team. The issue is, sure, he had an addiction. He was redshirting. But where do you draw the line, right? Okay, it's okay for a redshirt to gamble on their own team, but it's not okay for a reserve who doesn't get in the game but is on the sidelines. No. Or it's okay for the second string quarterback because he didn't play, but it's not okay for the starter. I'm of the opinion that it has got to be a firm line. This is black and white issue to me. And you know what? I kind of feel like if you do violate this sacrosanct rule, you should be punished. You should, but do you think he can rehab his life in other ways?
But stay with me on this. Like, do we treat college kids the same way that we treat, an NFL player or a Major League Baseball player or somebody that, is 30 years old playing the game and they're in the league? I see these two things as different. And I think sometimes maybe because these college kids are coming in at 18, 19, 20, they should not have this available to them, and I do think we've got to do a better job of sort of sending that message. We, of course, don't want people gambling on games. He should have to sit, but I'm a little uncomfortable with throwing the book at him and saying, hey, there's no path back for you here. You're banned, you can't play, or you're out for the year. And so I do think now it's incumbent on the Big 12. Like, does the Big 12 step in and go, look, 2-game suspension from the NCAA, 2-game suspension from the Big 12 conference? Like, do they come in with their own set of rules, or do you start to see some teams in the Big 12 that say, we're not playing you? We're not going to play Texas Tech if that guy's on the field.
Well, that could be. I think by the end of the week, we'll have a little bit of idea which way the conference is leaning. And because the other schools are not named, I don't think that they would be, violating court order. But oh boy, I mean, this is like the core of all of college sports, any sport, any other sport, and he would be done.
Yes.
Right. And yes, he's a college athlete, but he's also getting paid millions of dollars a year. And I can't quite get that. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And like for anything else, I'm almost like, yeah, there should be a path back. But this is not about him. To me, it's not about him having a path back. It's about opening a wormhole that could, if you game it out, I mean, who knows if college football could survive? If people think that what we're watching is predetermined, like world professional wrestling, I mean, that fold up the tent and go home.
Right. And I get it. But I want to see, we have different, we have courts that are juvenile courts, right? I'm not saying that he's a 15 or 16-year-old kid, but he's closer to a 15 or 16-year-old kid in some ways than he is to the professional athletes. And especially when you come in as a freshman, you're 18, 19 years old. I could see some of those guys not making good decisions because we didn't make good decisions either, Wilner, when we were that age. Now, yes, you sign a contract, you walk by the posters that say you shouldn't gamble. I'm still now going to look back at the schools and go, hey, you better really be on this, because we know Brendan Sorsby's not the only athlete that was betting on a game. And, but I'm reluctant to throw the baby out with the bathwater here in this one. I want to see him rehab. I want a happy result at the end of the rainbow. I want him to come through it and go, hey, I'm a shining example of a guy who could have lost his way, and instead, look what happened. I got into a program. Does that mean he needs to be on the field playing all the time? I don't know. I'm looking at the Big 12 going, what are you going to do here? But I also am thinking about a guy from the Pacific Northwest. How about Rick Neuheisel back in the day?
Yeah.
He what did he do? Fill out a bracket? Lost his job?
He did a March Madness bracket when he was coaching the Huskies, and he got fired. I was actually thinking about Neuheisel. I looked on his Twitter. He has not tweeted anything in 5 years. And it would have been today would have been a great day for Rick to chime in.
Yeah. Where's my bracket? Who did he have in that Final Four?
Who did he have? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, okay. So my ultimate result here would be rehab, fix him and make him a whole person.
Yeah.
Let him get the help he needs. Secondarily, open a path for him to get back onto the field. I'm not saying 2 games is enough. You have to punish athletes for breaking rules, but I don't want to see him banned. I don't want to see him lose a whole season. I feel like there's a path back here for him. Where do you stand? You're saying 0 tolerance. He should be not on the field.
Done. Adios.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I look at it. And I would think that if it were any college athlete who bet, and the thing is, I would be totally in your corner if it was gambling. If he was gambling on
anything else,
Indiana basketball, right, on your own team, that to me is like that's it. Because the NCAA has built this house on a slippery slope because they're in bed with the conferences, the schools, the events. They're all in bed with the wagering services and companies.
Maybe they shouldn't be
kind of asking for it.
Maybe they shouldn't be. Do you think that's
a great point?
Do you think that this is sort of that pivot point where, the NCAA as a whole has to look at itself and go, hey, wait, if we're not going to be okay with this, we really need to not be okay with this.
Well, that's a great point.
Back in the day, covering Jerry Tarkanian's team, he had a basketball team that had like 8 players in a substance abuse program at different
points. Chris
points.
Herron and those guys?
Yeah, Chris Herron and Rafer Alston and, that whole group, Bondre Jones. And, it was a little bit of irony because when they would run out onto the basketball court, they would run through this giant inflatable Coors Light can onto the court, right? It was the sponsorship they had sold to Coors. And yet here were these players who were all like really struggling with addiction and alcohol and substance abuse. And it was just like the ultimate hypocrisy. You're just running through this foam can onto the court. And so maybe this is that pivot point, the point of no return for college athletics, going, hey, you've sold out in so many ways. Maybe if you're going to, not be okay with people gambling, you need to not be okay with taking gambling money.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the last time anybody in college athletics agreed to take less money.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think the answer is never.
Never.
And that's even more true now because the schools are so desperate to pay the players because the players are according to the courts, the players are basically professionals. And so Oh my gosh, it is
I just don't see like let's talk for just a second about Sorsby. I don't want this to have look, he did something awful, he did something stupid, he's got a problem and he needs help for it. That should come first before he is worried about putting on a football helmet and getting back onto the field. But beyond that, I kind of think the best outcome would be, gosh, this kid rehabbed himself. This isn't really a football story, but he pulled his life together and football was that structure and he found a path back. And now he becomes the poster kid for like, hey, don't do this. I was stupid. Don't let it happen to you. But I don't think 2 games is enough. But I think, like banning him or suspending him for the year or making him ineligible for the year, I think is too much. But tell us in the comment section what you think of that. Let's talk about Capitol Hill. Big testimony, big Senate hearing. Teresa Gold, Pac-12 commissioner, among those giving testimony. Nick Saban was there. Pete Vivacqua, the Notre Dame athletic director, was there. Wilner, what did you make of the spectacle on Capitol Hill?
First of all, that was last Wednesday, and it feels like it was a month ago.
Yeah.
This is another gigantic issue. I know a lot of fans don't want to get into the weeds on the congressional legislation, but it is easy to connect the dots between what's going on in the Senate with the Protect College Sports Act, co-sponsored by Maria Cantwell from Washington and Ted Cruz from Texas. You can connect the dots from that to the future of college football and college sports directly, because this could very well accelerate the move into whatever is going to be next in college sports. Maybe it is just the Big Ten and the SEC expanding. Maybe it is a super league. Maybe it's the status quo. I don't know. But this bill cuts to the heart of some key issues. Now, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but there's some good things to it. Additional medical protection, 5 years of eligibility, that kind of stuff. But it is telling the Big Ten and the SEC how to conduct their business at its core, and that's where the problem lies.
I love that people were talking about it. I love seeing Nick Saban and Notre Dame's AD and Teresa Gold on the same side of the table. For a long time, we've talked on this show about how there are a strength in numbers. The Big Ten and the SEC have the money and the conference affiliation and the brands, but there are a lot of states, a lot of lawmakers, a lot of votes out there. And if you're going to get something done and you're going to dangle the idea that, hey, we want to level the playing field, we want to open the ability for conferences to pool their media rights, we want to limit the ability for people, they could transfer once, but if you transfer twice, now you've got a penalty, you got to sit out. Hey, by the way, Coach Lane Kiffin, you can't leave your team in the middle of the season to take another job. That's not going to be legal either. So I think there's some really good things in this bill, but it's 111 pages. And I don't know if you flipped through, it's 111 pages, Wilner. And there's a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of fat in there. I think there's a lot still that could potentially be changed. But I thought it was interesting. It wasn't like, how you tune in on C-SPAN and you see those congressional hearings and somebody from the big banks or the airlines grilled big tobacco, like they're just getting grilled. There was none of that.
Everybody there
was just kind of agreeing there's a problem. We got to fix it. This stinks. It was very, very cordial.
It was. I think part of that's because I don't think that there were a whole lot of Democrats who serve on the Commerce Committee actually participating, because there's a fairly clear divide on this, Republican and Democrat, and whether the thing ever gets through the Senate and then gets through the House. If it does, it will assuredly be changed from the original version. But you mentioned one of the two key pieces, which is it provides the option for all the conferences to pool their media rights and basically sell to the networks the way the NFL does, right? The NFC East and the AFC South are together in that endeavor. And this would allow the Sun Belt and the SEC to be together in selling their media rights, which the SEC and Big Ten don't want to do that, because that would limit their advantage in both their competitive, their influence, and their financial edge. The other piece is that it basically singles out the Big Ten and the SEC and says you can't expand. Any conference that makes more than $1 billion in revenue annually can't expand. They don't want to be told how to run their business, and it's not. I mean, it's kind of it's not very capitalistic. Especially for a Republican like Cruz. They're supposed to be free market, but this is not free market in a lot of ways. So we'll see. Right now, the Big Ten and SEC are opposed, as are other constituents. And I would point out the majority leader in the House is from Louisiana and is not in favor of it as written. We'll see what happens, but it is a big deal because of what it would open up, not because of a lot of the minutia of the legislation.
What needs to happen here? If it's Big Ten and SEC against the world, what does the world need to do to get the Big Ten and the SEC to kind of, what's the diplomacy here? What's the concession that's made?
It is the world, and that's an interesting thing too, because essentially, the terminology we generally use is Power 4 and Group of 6, right, for the 10 FBS conferences. But it's really the Power 2 and the Group of 8. In this legislation and in many other ways, the ACC and the Big 12 are closer to the Pac-12 and the Mountain West and the Sun Belt than they are to the SEC and Big 10, because they are losing touch with the SEC and Big 10 in a lot of regards, and they're supporting this bill because it kind of reins them in. So I don't know what the play is if you're the Group of 8, because I think there's a good chance that the whole thing's going to backfire, and this is going to just force the SEC or prompt the SEC and Big Ten to try to go their own way more than they might have if the bill had never been introduced. They're being accused of wanting to form this super league, but they actually haven't done anything to indicate that that's their end game. I think that they have that in their back pocket in case something goes haywire. But, the accusations of the Super League are kind of coming from some private capital folks. And also, I'd say this bill is like it was written by Cody Campbell himself, the Texas Tech donor and billionaire, because it takes aim at the Super League, and Texas Tech is worried about getting left behind like a lot of other schools.
Well, I think too, though, when you look across, something came up, like, Senator Cantwell is one of the sponsors of this legislation, of this bill, and she brings up Washington State, right?
Yep.
But she is in a state where, like, she could easily have said, hey, this has been good for the Huskies, but I think you could argue maybe this hasn't been good for the Huskies, because you talk about the non-revenue generating sports. And I thought that was one of the interesting things that came up is as they were discussing this in this hearing, they started talking about the absurdity of dragging the Olympic sports athletes across the country. And they started talking about the possible death of women's sports programs and Olympic sports programs. And I think that speaks to, lawmakers in 50 states, right? Do we want to kill our Olympic development program? Do we want to kill the ability for women who are going to college to play sports, to go play sports? I think there's some really good things that were buried in there and then are becoming part of this discussion. But also, remember we had Mike Oresco on this show, the former commissioner of the American back in the day when he was still on the job. He's been replaced by Tim Pernetti. Oresco's retired. But Oresco said something to us in that interview that was ringing in my ears as they were talking. He said that, back when the CFP distributions were being negotiated, the original distributions that everyone's stuck with right now, he felt like the Big Ten and the SEC got Darwinian. And he said, he felt like, the rest of college athletics should have stood up maybe and called the bluff of the Big Ten and the SEC. Remember that?
Yeah.
I feel like there may be a little bit of that bluff is getting called right now. Like, hey, if you want to really split away and go on your own, let's see it. Because the rest of college athletics knows, the Big 12 and the ACC know that over time, they are going to lose sight of the SEC and the Big Ten. They're just going to lose. They can't even see them from the front windshield.
So there's a couple of, the concept of the Super League is very real, but the practicality of it is very not. Yeah. So real quick, there's a couple of options. Does a Super League mean that the SEC and Big Ten leave everybody else and basically combine
Hmm.
either formally or with a scheduling agreement and work together. See, I think if they did that, that is an antitrust violation waiting to happen, right? They get sued, they get their pants sued off in 30 seconds. Or do they leave but exist independently? The SEC only plays SEC schools. Big Ten schools only play Big Ten schools. They each crown their own champion. That would probably avoid an antitrust situation, but that's not a viable option for them because nobody nationally is going to care about that, right?
No.
So what does a super league mean? To me, it means that there's no combining. I mean, Ted Cruz fell for this too. He's like, this bill prevents them from combining. They're not going to combine. What's going to happen is Ohio State and Georgia and Texas and Michigan are going to leave. They're going to create something new. They're going to extricate themselves from the existing structure because that way, one, there's less of a chance of an antitrust suit. And two, it's a more efficient marketplace, right? Because if they combine, Fox and ESPN aren't going to want to pay for NC State against Minnesota or Mississippi State against Minnesota. What they want to pay for is they want to pay for Georgia against Ohio State, right?
Right.
So only if you've got the top 20 or 30 can you maximize your dollars. And this is exactly what Notre Dame AD Pete Bavacqua told the committee. He is the former president of NBC Sports. He knows what he's talking about. So I think all of the threat of the two leagues leaving and then combining is wrong. That's not what's going to happen. It would, if anything changes structurally, it would be the top schools creating something new. And so the bottom half of the SEC and the bottom half of the Big Ten would get left behind, just like Baylor and NC State and Washington State and Oregon State.
And there's part of me, Wilner, that says that's okay. Like if they want to go do that, we can have something then left behind that resembles what college football used to be, what college sports used to be. Maybe it's regionalized conferences again. Maybe it's, maybe there's a Power Five again, and it's just at a different form.
Right.
But here's another thought.
Relegation and promotion.
Yeah. But here's another thought. Like, how do these colleges make their money? Like super reliant on media rights money.
Yep.
And then beyond that, it's what? It's gift giving, it's sponsorships, it's donors.
Ticket sales,
I saw ticket sales, But I saw, if you do a super league, somebody's going to go 10-2.
Right.
Someone's going 2-10.
That's right.
How is that 2-10 program? Let's just say hypothetically it's Oregon or Washington in a given year. You have a down year. It's just like the NFL. Someone's going 2-10. So whoever goes 2-10, how are they generating revenue, ticket sales, NIL dollars, revenue share? Are they just going to fall off a cliff as soon as you have a bad season? And how do you manage that if you're a super league?
That's the argument against it. That's the let's call their bluff argument that people have been making for a few years. Texas would never want to be 2-10, right? And I think there's some validity to it. And it would be curious how they structured that league in terms of, trying to create parity like the NFL has. I mean, that's one of the great things about the NFL, right? You can go 3-14 one year and 14-3 the next because of the schedule and the draft picks and all that. I just think the money would be too big. And the temptation everybody's going to want to be part of that. It's going to take one school, whether it's Ohio State or Notre Dame. It'd be one of those two is the first to go. And then, Oregon doesn't want to be 2-10, but Oregon also doesn't not want to be in that league when they're getting bajillions of dollars every year. So it is going to be so interesting to watch. And the thing that I would want to leave our viewers with is everything has been accelerated, I think, because of this Senate bill. I think it could very well backfire, but it is certainly a propellant to get us to the next era, whatever that's going to be.
Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be fascinating. We talked about the downtime. You mentioned, the month of June, it's a downtime. No, There's more going on right now, more meaningful stuff going on. The Big Ten and SEC against the world is part of it. All this stuff coming to a head. Meanwhile, big hire in Corvallis.
I'm going to give you the floor on this one, my
Oregon
friend.
State goes for the Ohio State guy, Kevin Griffin, nephew of Archie Griffin, a guy who has not managed. He's not been a director of supervisor of a football program. He's not managed coaches. He's largely been in the marketing and brand and licensing space at his jobs. Oregon State handing the keys to Kevin Griffin. Now, I think the Beavers 180 degrees wanted to get away from Scott Barnes and tradition. I do think they sort of toyed with the idea of hiring somebody who could be a good marketer, somebody who's in the brand space, revenue generation. They wanted that, but they didn't go with a CEO of an athletic department and then hire an AD and didn't have a two-headed monster here. They just hired Kevin Griffin. Jathy Murthy, the president of Oregon State, said to me, I said, will you hire somebody else? She says, it's Kevin's hire. It'll be a deputy. He's going to need a really good number two, Wilner, who has real experience in managing coaches, managing programs, doing sort of the old job that an AD used to do. He's going to need a strong number two. I'm told he's not bringing somebody from Ohio State. It'll be somebody new from probably the outside world, but really interesting hire. I found a bunch of people that said good things about him. He'll be introduced this week in Corvallis as the new AD, but Oregon State going with marketing, branding, licensing. Yeah. Where's the money buried?
Too bad he can't bring Jeremiah Smith with him. So I totally agree with you about getting away from the Scott Barnes era. The two things that jumped out to me, one is that this is clearly a search firm hire, right? Clearly, which doesn't mean it's bad and could mean it's good, but he is so different, right? From what you would have thought was a group of candidates that have ties to Oregon State or, West Coast college sports. And the other piece that struck me is Oregon State has got a rookie athletic director, a rookie football coach, and a rookie men's basketball coach. And boy, that is rolling the dice. Yeah. That is like hitting on 16 or 17 or what. I haven't even played blackjack in so long. What do you think about that? That they are going rookie across the board on the three biggest positions in athletics.
I asked the president of Oregon State about that. I said, hey, you've got, new AD, nobody's done this. First time, first year for everybody. This is all new. And she said, same old president, like she joked about that, but they're going into a new conference in this way. I think it's a fascinating experiment. I think it's interesting. I like the energy of it. Justin Joyner, the men's basketball coach, has tremendous energy. Jamarcus Shepard, he's out recruiting. He's a really good recruiter. Yep. And they get a guy who, I've been told that Kevin Griffin comes into the room. He's really bright and he's smart. He comes into the room and he's more of a consensus builder and he's going to make everybody feel like they're the most important person in the room. There's a real good energy about it. And so I'm interested to see what happens with it. It's very different. And I think Oregon State could have gone same old, and they decided to go outside the box. I'm going to buy it for now. I also think this is not something that I thought about right away, but it hit me hours after I had kind of written a column. I was thinking back to the history of Corvallis and DeAndros, and Oregon State was a program that had a hard time recruiting African-American football players, basketball players for a period of time. And I know
where you're going. This is a great point.
I'm looking right now at the Oregon State Athletic Department, and I'm going African-American basketball coach and men's basketball, African-American football coach, African-American athletic director.
Yep. I thought about that. At one point, Stanford, about a decade ago, had a similar situation. I think about Oregon State and Washington State, because the Cougars also have a rookie athletic director, John Harlow, and a rookie football coach in Kirby Moore. And David Riley, their men's basketball coach, 2 years there, and I think 2 or 3 years in the Big Sky, right? I mean, he's not a rookie, but he's close. And then you compare that to some of the veterans, football, men's basketball, athletic directors with the schools that are joining the Pac-12. Like, just even think of San Diego State is the opposite of Oregon State and Washington State. Is it purely a financial deal that the Beavers and Cougars want to go cheap? I don't think so. But it's interesting that the holdover schools are in lots of ways the rookies, at least in terms of the key leadership positions.
I think it's a fascinating study. Interested to see where it goes. Also interested in this guy, Mike Leach.
We got to hit this
Mike
before
Leach.
We go.
They changed the rules. They finally lowered the win percentage requirement for the ballot, and Mike Leach, who was so close to reaching the minimum win percentage, is now on the Hall of Fame ballot. He's going to get in. They changed this rule for him, Wilner. And I think it's right. I think his impact on coaching and college football and football at large is unmistakable. I think we've talked about this before. I think we both agree he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, first ballot Hall of Famer. They changed the rule. The rule was, if for a coach, you had to have a winning percentage of 600. His was 596. If he had one more win, he would have cleared the bar. So they dropped it to now 595. So I don't think he's the only coach who is now eligible under the new standard, but they did it because of Leach, because if you can't have a Hall of Fame, College Football Hall of Fame, without Leach. I mean, on the list of most influential coaches in the last 50 years, I mean, I can't think of somebody who's should be above him at least. Yeah. I mean, the air raid is high school, college, and NFL. It is the dominant form of offensive football. And he is the main creator and practitioner of it. And so they had to do something. So I would imagine the voting is, I want to say it's in the winter. So it's going to be 6 months. I can't believe he won't get in. The ballot, I don't know if you went through the ballot. It is loaded, right? I mean, there's guys in there that I thought for sure already were in the Hall of Fame that are not. Will be real interesting to see who else gets in, but I would be shocked if Leach does not.
I also think, look at where he coached. He was at Texas Tech. He was at Washington State. He was at Mississippi State. He coached at some places that historically didn't win.
Yes.
And won, and he changed sort of the temperature in the room. He has impacted all those programs in a positive way.
Right.
He left them better than he found them, each of those places. And so I think you make the argument that a 596 coaching at those places, or do you put him at USC and Oregon and Ohio State?
Absolutely.
I mean, what percentage of games is he winning? I think they did the right thing here, lowering the percentage, making him eligible. And I think the voters will do the right thing and put him in.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. You have to take that into account. Now, the Hall would say, and the thing is, they redid their eligibility standards about 20 years ago to try to raise the threshold. But they've got, you think about NFL, what's it, 32 teams and 50 players per team. I mean, the Hall of Fame includes the lower divisions and NAIA, right?
Yeah.
They got hundreds of people every year that are coming onto their ballot. It's hard. I mean, Simeon Rice is not in the Hall of Fame, incredible player. There's a lot of guys who should have, in theory, been in long ago, but can't because it's so crowded. That's the one quick question about Leach is he going to get in ahead of these other coaches like a Jackie Sherrill, for instance? He should, but I can't wait to see who ends up getting inducted.
Look, I think he gets in. I think it'll be fun to have him in, and let's put him in the Hall of Fame too, as far as interviews go. Been a fantastic guest on this show. I had him on my radio show numerous times. It was always fun.
Absolutely.
To have Leach on.
And he'd be getting in 1 year after his buddy Chris Peterson gets in.
Yeah, there you go.
Just got inducted. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Tell us in the comment section, what do you make of the Brendan Sorsby situation? What do you make of Big Ten and SEC against the world? What should be done there? How about Oregon State's hire on the AD front? Does it work? Does it work at Washington State, where they're fairly new as well? And let us know about Leach in the Hall of Fame. Do you have a favorite Mike Leach story? Read me at johncanzano.com. Read him at wilnerhotline.com. And make sure you get back here next week.
Thanks, everybody.